What if I told you that one man's rejection from art school would lead to the deadliest war in human history? This is that story, a tale of ambition, power, and a world forever changed. On a spring day in 1889, April 20th to be exact, a child entered the world in the quiet Austrian town of Braunau am Inn. His parents, Eloi and Clara, gave him the name Adolf. Nobody watching that infant could have imagined the shadow he would cast across the 20th century. Young Adolf was ordinary in most ways. He spent his days like other children, running through fields, sketching whatever caught his eye, dreaming of things beyond his small town. But his home life carried tension. His father Eloi was a hard man, demanding and inflexible. Eloi had carved out a respectable position as a customs official, and he expected his son to follow a similar path into government service. Adolf had other plans burning inside him. He whispered to his mother, telling her about his real passion. He wanted to create art. He wanted to paint. Clara understood her son's heart and wished she could shield his dreams, but Eloi wouldn't hear of it. Night after night, arguments echoed through their home. Eloi would bellow that art was a foolish pursuit, not a proper career. Adolf learned to hide his pain, swallowing his frustration in silence. Everything shifted when Adolf reached 13. His father died unexpectedly. You might think the boy would feel liberated, but instead, something broke inside him. The loss created a wound that never quite healed. School, which had once held his interest, now seemed pointless. His teachers noticed the change immediately. They'd shake their heads and say he had potential but wasted it through laziness. Adolf stopped caring about grades or attendance. All that mattered was his sketchpad. When his school years ended, Adolf made a bold decision. He packed everything he owned and traveled to Vienna, Austria's magnificent capital. His heart raced with possibility. Vienna meant culture, museums, and opportunity. He convinced himself that this was where his artistic career would begin. The Academy of Fine Arts stood as his target, the prestigious institution where real artists were made. He submitted his application with confidence. Then came the crushing blow: rejection. The Academy informed him that his work fell short of their standards. The humiliation burned, but he refused to accept defeat. He'd try again the following year. Surely they'd made a mistake. But when he reapplied, the same answer came back: rejection. Again. The dream that had sustained him through childhood crumbled. Life in Vienna turned harsh quickly. Without the academy and without income, Adolf struggled to survive. He moved between cramped, filthy rooms in the poorest parts of the city. Some nights he had no roof over his head at all, sleeping wherever he could find shelter. To earn a few coins, he painted simple postcards and watercolors, selling them to tourists on street corners. Bitterness grew inside him. Why was fate so cruel? Why did others succeed while he suffered? Then came another devastating blow. His mother Clara, the one person who had truly believed in him, passed away. Now he was completely alone in the world. The anger that had been simmering inside him began to boil over. Instead of looking inward, he started pointing fingers outward. It became easier to blame others than to face his own shortcomings. When 1914 arrived, the world exploded into war. The Great War, they called it. For Adolf, this chaos represented something different. It was a chance to matter, to belong to something greater than himself. He enlisted in the German army immediately. The military structure gave his life purpose for the first time in years. He felt proud wearing the uniform. Finally, he told himself he was part of something significant. Adolf proved himself on the battlefield. He volunteered for dangerous missions, running messages through zones where bullets flew and shells exploded. His bravery earned him medals. The war gave him an identity and a sense of worth he'd never known. But when 1918 came around, Germany was defeated. The armistice felt like betrayal to Adolf. He was enraged. In his mind, weak politicians had stabbed the military in the back. Germany needed strength, needed someone who wouldn't compromise or surrender. After the war, Adolf returned to a Germany that barely resembled the country he'd left. Economic disaster had struck. Inflation made money worthless. People stood in endless lines for bread. Families starved. The Treaty of Versailles forced Germany to accept blame for the war and pay crushing reparations. Resentment and desperation filled the streets. Adolf recognized opportunity in all this suffering. He discovered a tiny political group calling itself the German Workers' Party. When he attended his first meeting, something clicked. These people were angry like him. They wanted change. And when Adolf spoke up, people listened in a way they never had before. His voice carried emotion and conviction. He had a gift for channeling rage into words that moved crowds. Adolf quickly rose within the group. He pushed to rename it the National Socialist German Workers' Party. He designed a striking symbol for them, a crimson banner bearing a black swastika. He promised them this image would become known throughout the world. His rallies grew larger. Hundreds became thousands. They wanted to believe his promise that Germany could reclaim greatness. But Adolf's vision came with darkness attached. He needed scapegoats to blame for Germany's troubles. He pointed at specific groups, claiming they'd caused the nation's downfall. His message mixed hope with hatred, pride with prejudice. Many Germans, desperate and hurting, accepted his explanations without questioning them. In 1923, Adolf's impatience got the better of him. He tried to seize power through force in what became known as the Beer Hall Putsch. The attempt failed spectacularly. Authorities arrested him and sentenced him to prison. Behind bars, Adolf spent 9 months writing. His book, which he titled My Struggle, laid out his entire worldview. He wrote about German destiny, about purity, about enemies within. When the book was published, it found an audience. His ideas spread. Released from prison, Adolf returned to political work with renewed focus. The Nazi Party expanded its influence year by year. Germany's economy remained fragile and people wanted answers. By 1933, the moment arrived. Adolf Hitler was appointed Chancellor of Germany, the nation's highest office. He'd achieved legitimate power through democratic means. Germans who'd voted for him thought they were choosing stability and prosperity. Adolf moved quickly once he held authority. Infrastructure projects employed millions. Factories hummed back to life. Roads stretched across the country. On the surface, Germany appeared to be recovering its strength. Citizens felt pride returning. Many genuinely believed Adolf was their savior, the leader who'd rescued them from despair. But beneath the visible improvements, something sinister was taking root. Adolf consolidated his control over every aspect of German life. Newspapers printed only what he approved. Radio broadcasts spread his message. Schools taught children to worship him. The SS, his personal military force, enforced loyalty through intimidation. Young people joined the Hitler Youth, learning to march and salute, absorbing propaganda disguised as patriotism. The swastika hung everywhere, an inescapable reminder of who held power. Adolf's speeches became more grandiose and aggressive. He spoke of Germany's right to dominate. He declared that Germans were superior. Massive crowds gathered to hear him, raising their arms in salute, chanting his name. The cult of personality grew until questioning him became dangerous. Those who disagreed disappeared into camps or worse. In 1939, Adolf made the decision that would define his legacy. He ordered German forces to invade Poland. With that act, the Second World War began. Adolf's ambition was naked now. He wanted to conquer Europe, to create an empire that would last 1,000 years. His armies swept through countries with shocking speed. Poland fell, then France. Victory after victory made him seem unstoppable. But Adolf was simultaneously orchestrating something far more horrific behind the military campaigns. He initiated a systematic plan to eliminate Jewish people, and others he deemed undesirable from existence. This genocide, which history remembers as the Holocaust, remains one of humanity's darkest chapters. Millions of innocent human beings were murdered in camps designed for industrial-scale killing. The scope of evil was almost incomprehensible. As the war dragged on, cracks appeared in Adolf's empire. He'd made too many enemies. The Soviet Union, despite initial German victories, proved impossible to defeat. American industrial might enter the war, tipping the balance. British resistance never broke. By 1944, German cities were being bombed into rubble. The armies that had marched triumphantly across Europe were now retreating on all fronts. Adolf's mental state deteriorated along with Germany's fortunes. Paranoia consumed him. He trusted fewer and fewer people. He retreated into a bunker deep beneath Berlin, issuing orders that made little sense as reality closed in around him. The generals who'd once admired his boldness now saw a man detached from reality, commanding armies that no longer existed. By early 1945, the end was undeniable. Soviet forces surrounded Berlin. Artillery pounded the city day and night. Buildings collapsed into ruins. In the bunker, Adolf lived in a twilight world, cut off from the surface. With him was Eva Braun, the woman who'd stayed loyal through everything. Their relationship had remained hidden for years, but now secrecy no longer mattered. Advisors begged Adolf to surrender to spare what remained of Germany. He refused with contempt. To him, surrender meant weakness. If Germany was losing, he reasoned, it meant the German people had failed him, not the other way around. His narcissism prevented him from accepting any responsibility. On April 29, 1945, in that underground bunker, Adolf married Eva in a brief ceremony. Just a handful of witnesses attended. It was a strange, grim affair. Both of them understood what was coming next. They spent hours together, perhaps reflecting on the path that had led them there. The following day, April 30th, Adolf made his final choice. He gathered his remaining loyal followers and told them plainly that he wouldn't be taken alive. He and Eva withdrew to a private room. Moments later, both were dead by their own hands. Adolf was 56 years old. His 12-year reign had brought catastrophe to the world. When Soviet soldiers reached the bunker and discovered the bodies, the news spread quickly. Within days, Germany surrendered unconditionally. May 8, 1945 marked the official end of the war in Europe. The continent lay in ruins. Cities were destroyed. Economies were shattered, and the true scale of the Holocaust was just beginning to be revealed. The world that emerged from the war was forced to confront what had happened. The trials at Nuremberg brought Nazi leaders to justice. Germany itself was divided and occupied. The country would spend decades rebuilding not just its infrastructure but its moral standing in the world. The Holocaust became a permanent scar on human history, a reminder of what happens when hatred is allowed to flourish unchecked. Today, Adolf Hitler's name carries unique weight. It represents the ultimate warning about the dangers of unchecked ambition, of demagoguery, of scapegoating and hatred. His life story isn't just history. It's a lesson that remains relevant. It shows how economic desperation can make people vulnerable to dangerous ideas. It demonstrates how charismatic leaders can manipulate fear and anger. It proves that ordinary citizens can be complicit in extraordinary evil when they stop thinking critically. There are lessons we can extract from this dark chapter. First, our choices ripple outward in ways we can't always predict. Adolf's decisions didn't just affect him. They destroyed millions of lives, reshaped continents, and altered the course of history. Every action we take, no matter how small it seems, carries potential consequences. Second, division and hatred only breed more suffering. When we define ourselves by who we're against rather than what we stand for, tragedy follows. The world works better when we seek common ground instead of emphasizing differences. Compassion and understanding build better futures than anger and blame. Third, we must remain vigilant about who we grant power to and why. Democratic systems can be undermined from within. People who promise simple solutions to complex problems often have hidden agendas. Critical thinking and moral courage are essential safeguards against tyranny. The story you've just heard is one of the most important in modern history. It's a tale of how one person's resentment and ambition, combined with a vulnerable society, created unprecedented destruction. But it's also a reminder of our responsibility. We must remember these events not to dwell on darkness, but to ensure we never repeat such mistakes. History isn't just about memorizing dates and names. It's about understanding human nature, recognizing patterns, and learning from the past to build better futures. The legacy of this era teaches us that vigilance, compassion, and moral clarity aren't optional. They're essential. Choose kindness over cruelty. Choose humility over arrogance. Choose unity over division. These aren't just pleasant ideals. They're practical necessities for a functioning society. The alternative, as history has shown us, is unthinkable. This was the story of Adolf Hitler, a man whose life serves as both a warning and a lesson. Thank you for taking this journey through one of history's darkest periods. May we learn from it and build something better.